Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We're back again with another podcast, obviously. Welcome back. Today, we're talking a little bit about doing things differently. What we need to do to see different results, to get where we want to go. What does that take? Let's talk about getting different.
There's lots of ways we can go with this one.
It's true. That's true.
Is it too early or too late for that one?
Not at all.
Yeah, we've all heard that phrase. In order to get, or the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I know we spoke about this a gajillion times, but we don't necessarily have a podcast on it. And, I feel like even ourselves, we've had many conversations or even caught ourselves where although we're pretty quick to admit when we're doing the same thing or not doing the things that we need to do in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish. But I think it's kind of fitting to have this conversation now because there are so many different things. We were just having a conversation before the podcast about I'm not getting X and I'm not getting Y, or every time I work with this one client, I'm getting the same results or whatever it is. And it can feel sometimes like you're going crazy if you don't take a step back and see your cause and effect. See that when you are just trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, and you want different, it's not heading you in the right direction to be able to get a different result. And that's kind of what the cycle of insanity is about.
Oh, absolutely. I feel there are definitely moments where I'll look up and suddenly I'm like, I'm doing the exact same thing, or this is the exact same conversation I had at this, with this client or with this facility or with this agent or whatever over and over again. And, it's funny that they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, because I feel insane when I have to keep asking the same questions or repeating myself and feeling like I'm doing the same thing over and over, whether I want to or not. It feels insane. And so I always am surprised when people don't feel that insanity inside of them. Like from a business perspective, from a business consultant, like, oh, I keep doing this and this and this and this in my marketing and it's not working and I'm frustrated. And I'm like, but don't you feel the insanity of the fact that you're doing the same thing over and over in your marketing and wondering why it's not working and never really analyzing whether or not it's the right thing to do, or looking at the analytics? And yeah, I just had this conversation yesterday with a client. I've been putting X amount of money into advertising. I'm like, okay, well, what are your results from that? Oh, I don't know. I just feel like it's good to have advertising. I'm like, well, you're spending like $600 a month or like $700 a month on this one particular platform, but you don't know if you've gotten a single sale from them. And you're wondering why you're not getting return on your money, and you don't even know what and it seemed insane to me. I'm like, wow. And I'm like, I love you. I like you. I love you. You probably know who you are if you're listening to this podcast. And it made me really feel like, don't people feel the insanity of not doing something different if it's not working? Don't you feel it in your bones that you're just going crazy if you don't do something a little bit different? And I think, I think about my family. I'm a little bit of the black sheep. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are a bit of the black sheep, a little bit outside of the box. And I feel like I'm constantly having that conversation of showing them oh, I'm going to do it this completely different, backwards, crazy way that you guys think is insane. And then I'll show results from it. And it's like, oh, it's like a one-off. It couldn't be because you did something different, or because you tried, or because you went out on a limb, or because you sought something different, it's just like a chance encounter. Go. That's what happened.
Yeah. You know, I do want to clarify, we are definitely big rinse, repeat, refresh,
Of course.
but that's for things that are working in the right direction. What we're talking about is you're wanting different results, you're wanting a different response, you need a different result, you need a different response. When we were talking about covering this subject, one of the things I was thinking about that I constantly am having conversations with clients and non-clients all the time around, especially with couples, is the conversations that we have. We always end up at the same place, and the conversation, they always act this a certain way, or we're not getting anywhere with our conversations. And I often say, have you approached it differently? Have you tried, what's your normal patternized approach to this conversation if you feel like it's just falling on deaf ears? Oh, well, this way, this way, this way. Okay, well, why don't you try this approach? And so it's anywhere, it's not the things that you want to rinse, repeat, and amplify and like tweak to make better. It's the things that you want different. There's a different result or a different solution that is needed. There's lots of reasons why people stay in the comfort of a pattern, of a holding pattern, if you would. People are afraid of doing things different, right? So there could be a little bit of fear. Change and new things can feel risky or uncomfortable. And you can mask that as, well, I don't know better, or this has worked in the past. A lot of times people can live in well, it's worked before. Yeah, but it hasn't worked the last 10 times you've done it, or the last 15 times you've done it. So maybe that was a one-off, or maybe you were in a different situation. But, having that fear definitely can create stagnation. Also, it's a pattern. So we're in our comfort zone, or like I was talking about before with communication, we become patternized with the people around us. So we that's just our go-to. It's almost like you always brush your teeth with one hand unless you're training yourself differently. And so you tend to you in your mind, you want them to act different, you want them to respond different, you want a different result out of it, but you're always approaching it and breaching the conversation the same way, and it's not going to help anything.
Yeah, it doesn't help. And it's not miraculously going to change simply because you see the need for change, which can really, really be hard, particularly if you're the one who has to change. I mean, I've definitely, when you talk about fear and you talk about patterns, it's so easy to sit in status quo. It's so easy just to get in. And, it's almost been mistaken a lot of times, I think, for the flow. Like, oh, I'm just in the flow. Like, are you in the flow, or are you just not trying anymore?
I hate it when people use that excuse.
I hate when people use, like, yeah, I mean, I understand that the desired effect they want with that, like, oh, I'm just going with the flow, I'm just making, I understand the feeling and the meaning behind that, but whenever, it's almost like when someone says they're too busy, it just gets under my skin, because I'm like, I don't think that we're using that word in the right way. Maybe it's semantics, but going with the flow for a lot of people just means just going with whatever life takes you, or wherever life takes you. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to go into the same job, I'm going to go with the flow of traffic, get into the work, I'm going to do my day, come back, wonder why it wasn't unfulfilling, and then I'm going to eat the same takeout meal, go to bed at the same time, watch the same shows on Netflix, and like then rinse and repeat that because it's working. I mean, you're paying your bills, you're surviving, existing. Like, ugh.
Yeah,
ugh.
I would have to agree. And I would say, there is a distinction between like going with the flow or being in the flow of something and not wanting different, and somebody who wants different or needs to have different, because sometimes we need change, but we're not willing to put in the work. And so that's what we're talking about. Like, that's where going with the flow or being in the flow isn't, well, I mean, we can go with the flow. I think maybe more me sometimes than you, just because of behavioral and personality differences, but not in a way where we allow it to sweep us away, because we're constantly looking to like improve, to level up, or to at least patternize good habits. And I think, to talk about some things that we can do different in order to get different results. First, the thing I feel like you should look at, two things. First is your mindset around it, what we're just talking about. And then also your habits around it. Are your habits supporting the differences, or the willing to make differences? Are you constantly do you project? Do you react versus respond? Do you have healthy habits and healthy mindset that's going to allow you to make the changes to get different? So those are the first two places I would suggest to look at.
100%, because and just you talking or made me think of a couple of conversations I've had recently where they were willingly sitting in the shit, willingly sitting in that victim mentality because it served their need for attention, or it served their need for, some kind of twisted validation. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not a therapist, thank God. I would be horrible at that job. Horrible.
Can you imagine?
And oh my God, there'd be zero filter. It would just be terrible. But when it comes to making those changes, it's people like to sit in the shit. And if you just shift your mindset on it, and I know that's such a almost trite thing to say these days. It's just, oh, I'm just change your mindset around it. I mean, it feels very woo-woo and non-tangible. And I absolutely can get into that place where, because I'm a pessimist, 100%, or realist, as all pessimists will say, because I'm a realist, I see the negative side of things all the time, and I have to shift my opinion of it. And there are lots of times where I don't want to do something because it is uncomfortable, or because I'm procrastinating for a variety of reasons. And then you shift your mindset around it. Like, this is going to help me do this. This is going to, and it's a small shift. It's not like I suddenly become a different person because I've shifted my mindset around a particular task, but it does help it get done more. Or maybe it's shifting the action around it. So instead of waiting until 2:30 p.m. to do it, I do it the second I wake up. So I'm just like, it's the eat the frog scenario, like getting rid of it. But those small changes, those habits they're real. It's really easy to fall into a habit that isn't serving you. Just as you can tell how hard it is to create a habit that does serve you. A lot of times it's really much more difficult than you think. And so just flipping around your mindset about why you're doing something, about what it's going to be doing for you in the future, can absolutely change the narrative of how far you go and how you're able to change and how you're able to handle change. Because it's not always sunshine and rainbows. I mean, it's not like, oh, I won the lottery, so here's a good change. Like, it's not always a lottery winning scenario of change. Sometimes it's the worst. And your mindset can shift around what makes it the worst, or knowing that things are happening for you, not to you, can change everything.
Yeah. Yes. A few other things that you can do. One of my favorites is switch up the environment. I mean, I love getting out of my space to be able to try to create new energy, just be in different energy and vibrancy, hopefully, depending on the space that you choose. But something that's inspiring. Also, I love that and I know we talk a lot about like eat the frog, and that's just like tackling that huge task or that big thing. And I think that that's also like something that can help get you kind of shake up the pattern that you have in your conscious and subconscious being, is to like do a bold move. So, by that course that you are always thinking of, push yourself out of your comfort zone, essentially, is what I'm saying. And one other thing, and we've used to speak about it a lot, and I know sometimes we do, is really like having an accountability buddy or coach also to help you really just like get you out of your everyday go-to thinking, because you know, and all coaches are made equal, let's be honest, or accountability buddies. But even when we're training ourselves to think different, to do different, that pattern that we had, those patterns that we had are ingrained in us. The neural pathways are beaten down. And so they're in there. So it's not a wham bam one time thing. Like you're going to be able to like reverse it. It's going to take practice, and it's going to take different parts of what we just said. The mindset and habits are essential, but like changing up your space, getting an accountability buddy, do bold moves, different things like that. But constant, and push yourself always out of your element, because it's so easy to fall back into those patterns. But also you have the go-to patternization, but you have or I should say the conscious patternization, but you also have the subconscious patternization that you might not even be aware of. So when you're trying to put yourself out and do something different, you might be subliminally already doing that. And so the more you do it, you kind of like, the more you practice the practical tips of ways to do things differently, I feel like you're getting out of even that like subliminal and subconscious kind of go-to patterns that you might have, or beliefs that you might have, or habits that you might have. So it's really a practice to just kind of like constantly pushing yourself outside of that, and taking it back to like the conversation aspect. You and your partner, let's say, Amanda and I, might be having the same conversations over and over and over and over and over again. We try not to, but it happens. I'm just using us as an example. If I change up the script to try to get a different response out of Amanda, and I only do it that one time or 3 times in a row, like then she's going to catch on to that pattern. So that's what I mean by even like trying to constantly kind of push that limit, that level, so that way you're not both falling back into even the subconscious patternization. And this is how you break that habit of always doing what you do and expecting different results.
Yeah, as we're talking about environment, I'm reminded of this quote, and I don't remember who said it. We're quote people, but maybe it was Thoreau, but it was, no matter where you go, there you are. So when it comes to being different, it can start with small changes, like changing your environment, changing your routine, changing habits and things. But ultimately, if what you're seeing is on a fundamental you level, the change has to come from you. It can't be external. It can't just be, oh, if I move to Timbuktu, I'm going to be a better, more amazing person, and all these things are going to align, and I'm just going to be happy. It's elusive happy. I hate to break it to you, as somebody who has tried that, it doesn't work. It works for like 3 days when you're like, look, I'm a whole new person in a whole new place, and everything's different and changed, and I am a new person. I have just
The
been reborn.
off. Like
it's the honeymoon phase. So that change can't be superficial. So if you're really trying to be different, do different, see different in a big, large scale way, not just like, I want to go to Europe for the first time kind of thing. Like not just not that that's not superficial for everybody. It's amazing, Europe, yay. But if you want to see change and have a big, different move, a shift in your life, that's of a bigger, more fundamental, deep internal way, it's going to take a lot more internal. And that's why I love that Lynn said that mindset's the first one that to do and think about, because it really does come from the deep recesses of who you are if you want to see a big change. And it doesn't always come quickly. In fact, I would say it almost never does. And it doesn't come easily, usually. And it is 100% worth it, because no matter where you go, there you are. So you can choose if that's a positive quote or a negative quote. That's on you.
Wow. Choice. I it's interesting, and you just spoke about it. Like, is it worth it? And I think only the listeners can be can answer that for themselves. And I think it's situational. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, when you are, first of all, if you're feeling insane, then doing different can get you different results, with which would hopefully get you out of the insanity loop, right? But also, when you push yourself out of your own box, when you challenge your habits, when you challenge your mindset that's keeping you in a holding pattern or in stagnation. It's hard.
Words
Um,
are hard.
yeah, then you're missing out on opportunities. I feel also too is like you become numb, right? You're just going through the movements, and so you also can lose like the vibrancy or the love of that relationship, that business, that of life. And so it is, I think, essential for us to be kind of challenging ourselves, pushing ourselves out of those boxes that we put ourselves in or that others put ourselves in, those patterns in which we've created that keep us doing the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results, because it is worth it in so many different levels. And as leaders in our community, both professionally and personally, I feel like also it is an example. When we had a whole podcast on CEO mindset. I feel like that's part of a CEO mindset and of a leader as well, is that when we're challenging and pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone and making those steps, doing things different in order to get different results, even when we don't know what the result is that we want, but we're pushing ourselves to gain different results and learn from it at worst, it makes us better leaders. It shows others that we're willing to take risks in order to, go to unseen territories. And I think that that's important.
Absolutely. And it's not easy, but I don't think anybody who's listening to our podcast would ever accuse us of offering the easy solutions. Well, I mean, sometimes we do, I suppose. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. However, I'll challenge the audience. Like, what can you do this week that's different? If you're stuck in a place, if there's a part of complacency or something's just not working in your life, what can you do this week? That's just even a slight bit different? Is it a different way to go to work? Is it, you know, trying a different parenting technique? Is it rearranging your closet in a way that's color coded and much more compliant with the
Oh
world?
my God, I love color coordinated closets.
I know, really, honestly, it's the best. I mean, it helps if you only have one color in your wardrobe or like two, because it makes it much easier, but
It
in
does make
general.
it more difficult. Actually, I brought a new color home from being in the US, and I was like, where do I want to put it in my lineup of shirts? Because I actually have shirts separated from dresses and pants and color coordinated, but it's a new color that I don't have other colors in. I was very excited of figuring out where it
Tricky.
goes in my color lineup. Anyway,
Wow.
digressing.
Not really, because we're talking about doing something different. Still, it's a different color, it's a different something. Something's different. So, what can you do this week that is a little bit different? What can you do to set yourself up for different results? What is currently not serving you in your life that you've been kind of just going with the flow and not really addressing what's actually happening behind the scenes? What is that sticky point in your life? And I'm not saying that we all have to have these like huge, ginormous revelations and move across an ocean and, get a divorce and, start the carnivore diet all in the same week. Like, I'm not saying that. In fact, I would say that's a recipe for disaster all in the same week. However, like what are the changes that you need to make? And it doesn't have to be huge shifts. Some of the best shifts are small.
I
It's
believe
not
they
serving you.
always are. Yeah, yeah, and you don't even have to have a problem to change. Like you brought up parenting briefly, but I can actually remember doing this with my kids when they were little. Is like I would constantly get frustrated at a certain conversation or a certain thing that they would do, and just approaching that conversation differently. And it wasn't a big thing. I can't remember what it would be about at this point, but can you put into practice with even your communication style a different way of engaging with somebody in your life to see if you can get different results and kind of see the different responses or reactions that you receive from them. So baby steps, practice, practice, practice.
And don't self-sabotage. So don't think that it's not going to work before you even tried it. That one happens a lot. Like, oh, that will never work for me. I can't, that's not going to, they're not going to respond that way to that. They're not going to like that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you do know the answer and you're correct. I mean, I find myself saying that a lot of times I'm parenting, like that's not going to work for my kid. And sometimes I'm right, but that's based on experience of having already done that thing. It doesn't mean that I, knocked it before I tried it. So when you're
I
having
think
these
that's
conversations
different
with
because
yourself,
you try things before.
yes, but that's just, I'm saying, like, don't let yourself don't instantly say it's not going to work if you haven't already done the work to try it. Because I think that happens a lot because you have that fear base around like, this isn't going to work, or like, particularly I can think of a couple people who are having difficult conversations right now and having the narrative of, I can't say that to my spouse because they're not going to respond well. Well, you've never tried to respond. You've never tried to say that to them. You've never tried to express yourself. So how do you know it's going to work or not? Because you've never done it. So
Exactly.
don't poo-poo things until you've actually given them a little bit of a shot.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a friend who's having a health thing right now. And of course, I'm more of Eastern, although I'm a Western medicine. I mean, being a cancer survivor and the things I've had to go through, obviously, I believe in the mesh of Western and Eastern. And it's interesting that you were saying that because it did bring up one more point too, is that I had suggested a few things and they're not they were diagnosed a couple years ago and they're not having great results, and actually it's life threatening. And I suggested some stuff and their response was, oh well, so and so a family member who's in the medical field doesn't feel like that's good for me right now. And I was thinking, like, shit, everything that they've done for you is not a good thing right now. Like, you haven't been in remission with this illness. And so one other point I guess what I'm making is that be aware of the people around you too. Just because they have good intentions doesn't mean that they're helping you on your journey as well. Anyway, I had to get that one off my chest.
It's a good one because I think a lot of people, I mean, not everybody, obviously, pessimist. Not everybody has the best intentions for you, but there are a lot of people in your life, in your circle or inner and outer circle, that do have good intentions towards you. But you have to be your own advocate. You have to look at your life through your lens because they're only seeing a part of the picture. No matter how close they are to you, they're
Well,
not
and it's
you.
their lens. And this is personal, professional, uh, anywhere from health to finances, like anything. It's just interesting. But if you're expecting different, you have to do different. At the end of the day, that's what this boils down to. Either different environment, different habits, different mindset, different whatever. But if you want different, you have to do different. You have to step up to the plate differently than what you have been. And so, like Amanda said, like, where do you need to adjust how you're stepping up to the plate in order to get different results? Let us know in the comments. Definitely share this podcast with somebody who you feel could use a bit different in their life, who's going through the insanity loop.
And actually, share this podcast with Apple because I think we just basically talked about their entire slogan. Isn't do different isn't that their tagline? Anyway, the point is, I'm pretty sure it is. I think that's their thing. So maybe we should be sponsored by them. Just want to throw that out there into the
Just
universe.
bought another phone and they switched the things again. They're jerks, but they do different, right? So that way you have to buy more. So
you know what? That's
money.
a different model. In the olden days,
Yes.
let's make something that lasts for 400 years. Now it's like, let's make something that lasts for 1 year so that you have to buy the upgrade. Honestly, it's a different approach and it works really freaking well. So
absolutely. And since you brought up businesses, there are businesses that or companies that have done this really well that are pioneers of just being being different, that disrupts industries. I don't even know. Netflix was one of them. Uber was one of them.
I remember when Netflix started and I was like, how do we know they're going to send us our DVD? I just want to go down to the store. I can't be sure they're going to send it.
I used to
Yeah,
love Blockbuster. My cousin worked
of
at
course.
Blockbuster. She was the manager, and I would go and like do inventory with her and hang out with her all the time. It was my favorite.
I worked at a movie store at one point. The resistance to change, but look what happened with Netflix. Like, look how they completely changed the industry.
Oh,
It just blows me away.
revolutionized. It's insane. Anyway, we're digressing. How are you going to do different? And yes, share this with the people in your networks. That way they can, or somebody you need to have that conversation with, and it needs to end up being different than the same shit you've been getting over and over again. Share this podcast. Let them
Yeah,
ponder.
maybe instead of having that difficult conversation in the car, you just put on this podcast in the background and then you have a lively discussion about it afterwards.
Like,
Just saying.
what do you think about what they just said? Anyway, hit subscribe. Yep, all the good things. Let us know what you thought about this podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. And until next time,
Get after
get
it.
after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.